1946. The world was just beginning to recover from the devastation of World War II. And it was in this year that American scientists decided to conduct a series of secret medical experiments that could cause shock and horror in normal people. Medicine, as a science, strives to understand and treat diseases, and research plays a key role in this process. New treatment methods, the development of effective drugs and diagnostic tools, all this has become possible thanks to careful research and discoveries. However, many discoveries also have a dark side. The Guatemala project is a prime example of how the pursuit of new knowledge can lead to dire consequences. The purpose of the experiments was to study the effectiveness of penicillin in the prevention and treatment of sexual diseases. The experiments were carried out from 1946 to 1948, under the auspices of the United States and carried out by American researchers in collaboration with local medical institutions in Guatemala in Central America. At first glance, this may seem like a laudable mission in the fight against infectious diseases. If not for one terrible fact. Research in Guatemala involved forcibly infecting test subjects with syphilis, gonorrhea, or chancroid without their consent or proper treatment. Victims included prisoners, psychiatric patients, soldiers, orphans, and people from vulnerable social classes. Some of them were infected through direct contact with patients, others through injections, and others through oral or forced sexual intercourse. The studies included an impressive number of test subjects who were not properly informed about the nature of the experiment. Moreover, some of the participants were infected intentionally, without their consent. One such patient is Maria Teresa Larios, who was infected with syphilis at the age of 17. She was a patient in a psychiatric hospital in Amatitlán, where American doctors conducted their experiments. They injected her with the blood of a person with syphilis. As you may have guessed, the doctors did not inform her about the contents of the drug or the consequences of its administration. After this, Maria began to experience severe pain, rashes, dizziness, and weakness. She did not receive any treatment, but was only observed by doctors. The subject did not know she had syphilis until she got married and gave birth to a child, who died a few days later from a congenital infection. Her husband also contracted syphilis and died a few years later. She was left alone, suffering the effects of an illness that damaged her heart, liver, kidneys, and nervous system. Maria Teresa Larios died in 2009, not living to even hear an apology from the United States for what they did to her. In 1947, Juan Lopez was infected with gonorrhea when he was 19 years old. He was a prisoner in a prison in the city of Coban, where American doctors conducted their experiments. They injected him with a culture of gonococci, also without proper information and consent. After this, Juan began to experience severe pain, discharge, fever, and weakness. He also did not receive any treatment, but was only observed by doctors. He didn't know he had gonorrhea until he was released from prison and tried to start a family. As a result, the man could not have children, as the disease damaged his reproductive system. Juan was left alone, suffering the effects of the disease, which affected his health, work, and relationships. He died in 2008. Another outrageous story is the fate of Rosa Ramirez, who was infected with chancroid in 1948, when she was 16 years old. She was an orphan who lived in an orphanage in the city of Antigua. Doctors injected her with a culture of duria without telling her what kind of medicine it was. After this, she began to experience severe pain, ulcers, bleeding and weakness. Like many other experimental subjects, she did not receive any treatment, but was only observed by doctors. She didn't know she had chancroid until she was admitted to hospital with severe anemia and sepsis. The girl miraculously survived, but the disease left terrible scars on her body and face. As a result, she could not find a job or start a family because everyone rejected her because of her appearance. She was left alone, suffering from the effects of the disease that had destroyed her life. Rosa Ramirez died in 2010, also before hearing the official apology from the United States. These experiments were hidden from the public until 2010, when historian Susan Reverby discovered archival documents related to the project. The exact number of people affected by the experiment in Guatemala is difficult to determine due to limited data availability and the nature of the studies conducted. However, a commission created by the Guatemalan government and the World Health Organization estimated that at least 1,300 people were involved in the studies. When the details of Project Guatemala became known, they caused deep discontent and shock in world society. People around the world have expressed their outrage at immoral research methods, especially in an environment where science should serve people, not the other way around. The World Health Organization and UNESCO condemned such violations of ethical standards and demanded strict action against those who were responsible for conducting these experiments. The US has also been forced to take steps to remedy the moral and ethical damage caused by its own research in Guatemala. In 2010, US President Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton officially apologized to the Guatemalan people for these experiments. Then, in 2011, about 700 victims of the experiment filed a lawsuit in US court, demanding compensation for the damage caused, but the court rejected their claim, citing immunity of the US government. The court also rejected the appeal. In 2013, Guatemalan President Otto Pérez Molina said that the United States should not only apologize, but also provide humanitarian aid and medical care to the victims and their descendants. 2 years later, a Guatemalan court found 2 doctors involved in the project guilty of human rights violations and sentenced them to a symbolic fine of 1 quetzal each. About 13 US cents. At the same time, the Guatemalan Human Rights Center filed a lawsuit with the UN International Court of Justice, accusing the United States of genocide and crimes against humanity. In 2017, the Guatemalan Senate passed a resolution calling on the US government to fully disclose information about the project and to cooperate with Guatemalan authorities in investigating and redressing the damage. Currently, Project Guatemala victims continue to struggle to receive compensation and recognition of their rights. They also demand that the Guatemalan government provide them with medical care and social support. According to the researchers, about 20% of those infected during the experiment died from complications, and 8% had children with birth defects. Many others suffered from chronic illnesses. The project affected not only the physical but also the psychological health of the victims and their families, causing them depression, anxiety, shame, and stigma. Project Guatemala has become a symbol of what can happen when scientific interests exceed respect for human life and rights. The disaster has also exposed the vulnerability of many sectors of the population, especially in poor countries and communities. The protection of their rights has become an important issue for society as a whole. Events such as these have prompted the global community to rethink and improve ethical standards in medical research. Strengthen requirements for informed consent from participants, stricter medical oversight, and the establishment of independent ethics committees to evaluate and monitor medical research. It was through widespread public reaction that ethical standards in medical science were created and refined. However, this will no longer be able to restore the ruined lives and health of people. We, as humanity, need to remember that every life is unique and unrepeatable. Which means it is priceless. We must begin to value and cherish the lives of other people as if they were our own. Only in this way can we create a fair society in which every person will feel safe, have equal opportunities and the right to a happy life.